everyone, and welcome to another episode of For the Love of Marketing, where we talk all things marketing. I'm really excited today to have Sam Winsbury with me. He is the founder and CEO of the personal branding agency Kurogo, who do some fantastic things for personal brands. So definitely check them out. We're going to talk about personal branding today. We're going to talk about what it is, what to do and what not to do, and give some, I'm sure, some great tips from Sam as we go through this. So don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, let's get on with it. How you doing, Sam?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for the very kind introduction. Excited to be chatting.
That's all right. Yeah, there's a lot. I'm really jealous of your flat there. That view out the window is amazing. I've got my driveway with a car in it, and then some people doing some work on the house opposite out here. So blinds closed for me.
It's probably quieter than central London, to be fair. You've probably got a bit of peace.
It is a bit quieter most of the time. For those of you listening on audio, you obviously can't see, but yeah, go over to the YouTube channel and you'll be able to see the beautiful view out of Sam's window. Cool. So look, let's talk about personal branding, right? It's a big thing, right? It's grown enormously over this century, I suppose, this last 20 years. Obviously, names like the Kardashians and everyone leading the way, but it's possible and relatively easy now for someone to create a personal brand. But the creation is not obviously the magic. Actually developing that into something meaningful and controlling and managing that personal brand online is a big challenge. But let's just start with the basics. Compared to a corporate brand or a company's brand, what is a personal brand?
Yeah, so great question. I guess the obvious or the main difference being that personal brand relates specifically to an individual rather than an organization. So you might take the founder of a business, for example, and their personal brand would relate to them specifically, their reputation, how they're seen online, how people view them, rather than how they view the company that they work for. So a lot of the concepts are very much the same. A lot of the principles are very much the same, but applied to an individual rather than an organization. Easiest way of differentiating.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's great. And there's a number of things here. You've got sort of wannabe influencers who want to build their personal brand. You've got people who are established in some kind of field or other who need to then maintain a personal brand because they sort of accidentally developed one. And then you've got, of course, people of various levels, but certainly senior individuals at big companies. What are some of the considerations that people need to think about when managing their personal brand? So, corporate brand, we all know, but managing if you're the CEO of a big company, you don't really do social media, right? But you kind of got to. What do you need to think about when managing your personal brand?
Yeah, I think always got to start with the end. And the most important question I always encourage people to ask themselves is, what do you actually want out of it? Right, because that's going to essentially determine everything else you do and the approach that you'll take. So I think there's lots of different angles that you take, and probably the approach that the Kardashians would take is very, very different to, say, a director of a corporate company, right?
I think that's fair, yeah.
I hope so, anyway. So really starting with the end in mind and what you actually want to get out of this is really important. Is it just to shine a little bit more of a light on the company through kind of your own personal presence? Absolutely fine. In which case you're taking quite a commercially focused and tactical and practical approach to it. Is it to enhance your career prospects and maybe have a few different companies, a few different agencies, for example, for the people listening, reaching out to you, wanting to hire you? You may be able to negotiate a better salary, or position yourself as somebody that's kind of worthy of a job role. Is that the goal? Is it to essentially build yourself as a business and develop new income streams, be able to sell products and services? There can be a number of different approaches you take, but really you can't identify the approach you take unless you know where you're actually looking to go with it, what the end goal is in the first place.
I think that's a really important point. I mean, it's one I talk about in my books all the time, is you've got to know where you're trying to go. You can't just run around doing stuff, or you'll go mad, right? Just doing lots and lots of work without really having any end goal. It's critical to have that strategic direction at the beginning. So I think that's a really valid point and something for people to think very carefully about. But it raises a couple of points, what you just said there, for me, a couple of other questions prompted. One is with that goal, you've got to think about what am I going to do? Am I going to try and make money from this? Am I going to try and grow my profile? So how do you measure success on a personal brand? I mean, obviously it's going to be slightly different based on what goals you've got, right? Like you just said there, but what should someone be looking for if they're looking to say, is this worth investing the time? Maybe I've been doing this, trying this out for 3 months, 6 months, and I'm getting a few views here and a few followers there. How do you measure success, and what does good look like?
Yeah, as you rightly said, it will massively depend on what your goals actually are, on kind of a surface level, and this is absolutely okay to have as a goal. It might be things like followers. How many social followers have I got? Or how much engagement am I getting on content that I put out online? Those are quite tangible metrics that you can track, and they're absolutely okay to have as goals if your objective is to raise awareness around what you're doing or to build an audience, for example, which is very, very important. People say that, engagement followers are just vanity metrics. They can actually have huge impacts on you and your business. So they are important to build. It might be a case that actually you're not too bothered about how many followers you got, and really maybe it's a commercial exercise for you, and the metric for you is how many new clients am I getting, or how many new leads are we getting for the business? Again, absolutely okay. It might be things like, what's my search presence like? When people Google my name, what's coming up? Is it, my Facebook profile from 2003 and a load of other people with the same name that aren't me? Or is it that you've been featured in this publication, your LinkedIn profile, you on a podcast, your YouTube channel, whatever it is? One of those is obviously much more beneficial than the other. So yeah, it really depends on what the goal is, but there's a number of different ways that you can track it based on that. And those are a few examples of it.
So followers is an interesting one. I think it applies a lot more to personal branding than it does to corporate branding. And that might sound a bit odd, but just for me, as a personal branding, you're really trying to establish that follower base, and as a company branding, it's more about getting engagement with the right audiences. But with followers, what do you think about buying followers? Followers is your goal as a personal brand. What's your opinion on buying them?
Interesting. So I would never advise it, right? So I wouldn't advise buying followers. I don't think it's a smart metric, because really there's going to be no tangible benefit to those followers. Having the followers really it's almost a means to an end. It's a means to maybe selling a product or selling services, monetizing the audience in some way in the future. If they're bought, it's very, very unlikely that they're going to turn into a loyal customer of yours, for example. The only benefit I can see to buying followers is that when people come onto your profile, for example, they see that you've got 10, 20,000 followers. That to them is a sign that they should follow you as well, just through pure social proof, right? People are always asking themselves this question: why should I follow you? Why should I listen to you? And purely on a psychological perspective, if there's 10,000 or 20,000 other people that look like they're doing it, maybe that's something I would as well. But I would definitely advise building that audience organically rather than buying it. Long term, you'll see much greater returns.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I couldn't agree more. I think buying is the urge to do it. I can understand with everybody, right? You start out, you've got 13 followers, right? You want to build a personal brand, go out there and buy 5,000 tomorrow, and look at me, I'm a personal brand. But yeah, in reality, most of those are probably fake accounts and bots, and they're never going to engage with you, and they're actually probably going to make you very spammy, which means you're not going to show up in the algorithms anyway. So I wouldn't recommend it either, but it's worth putting that out there for those people listening who are considering building a personal brand and may be tempted by that. It's not something I'd put at the top of my list of recommendations, certainly. Cool. Okay. So what about monetizing it? That's the other thought that came off the back of what you said just now. A lot of people are ultimately building personal brands in order to make that an income stream. Maybe even that's their full-time job, right? So, I certainly know a few people who their entire job is running their YouTube channel. We've done some personal branding work ourselves over the years as well, and there's a lot to be said for that. The lifestyle is very nice if you can find an area, a niche that you love doing, and that can be your job. That's fantastic. You can get some followers, you can have a presence on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok, but how do you actually make any money out of this?
Yeah, so a few different avenues. Selling services or landing clients essentially is quite an obvious one that springs to mind. With a strong personal brand, you're probably getting more leads for your business, for example. You're probably able to convert them at a higher rate as well, because people are essentially coming to you already convinced that you can help them because they're consuming your content for the last 6 months, for example. And you can probably charge them higher prices as well, because they see you as an authority. They see you as a leader that's going to get them results. So landing clients is the obvious one. But then a few other ways people can do it. Things like courses or digital products. So it might be a course, it might be a book, it might be a paid community, number of different ways. These are probably slightly lower ticket, but more, the scale is higher, right? You can easily scale a book or a course or something, and that's a nice way to monetize it. Things like YouTube channels or podcasts, getting sponsorship for them, ad revenue, these sorts of things, another easy way to monetize. So number of different areas. Speaking on stage, another good one. So a lot of people will get paid to speak, or even paid to come on podcasts, which is another kind of easy way to exchange your brand, your information, your credibility for money.
Good, yeah. I mean, ultimately, it's a case of building your, I think you used the word very nicely, which is a word I probably overuse, but I love it, authority. I mean, ultimately, that's what it's about. If you build your authority and your position in a specific niche, then that obviously makes you an authority and drives your value much higher. So yeah, I think that's great. And there's lots of different ways to do that. Like you say, advertising, sponsorship, there's obvious ways. Selling digital products is great. I think selling courses and ebooks and things like that, webinar sign up series, there's so many things you can easily sell online today for not a lot of money. And if you can scale up the volume of that, then it quickly becomes a very nice income stream.
That's crazy as well. Some of the figures on how much people are willing to. Did a study in the States, a company called Hinge Marketing. They found that people were willing to pay 13.57 times more for people that they consider to be elite industry authorities compared to regular. So
yeah, it's right. And I think the other important point you mentioned there, and this is why it's always really, really worth creating a personal brand, is it's not just that people see you as authority and they therefore are willing to pay you significantly more. Also, it's that inherent trust that you mentioned as well. If you go out to work with someone, or if you're looking for someone to, I mean, this is something I've seen time and time again in my career. You look for someone to hire someone into a job, and you interrogate that person, and you're not sure if they're any good, and you put them on a probation, and anything they do wrong, you're straight in there with, we're going to grade you down because you didn't do very well. Whereas someone else who's out there as a consultant, that's they've got a name, they've got a website, they've got a profile, they've got some reviews on their website, they can have exactly the same or even lower experience, but you're going to bring them in and go, wow, just tell us what to do. You tell us, we'll do whatever you say. You're the expert, and it's really about that authority and that piece. There's just an instant trust. So driving that personal brand out there, which you mentioned earlier about getting a job, right? If you're looking out there for a job and people can come to you and say, wow, you're an authority, they're probably actually going to be far more likely to hire you, far more likely to pay you a bit more, and more likely to give you a bit more leeway at the beginning of your job than if you're just another person applying for a job. So it does make a big difference. And I think these days that's something that's available to people relatively early in their career, which just wasn't 20 years ago at all.
Yeah, I think pretty much anyone can look good on a job interview for half an hour, 45 minutes. Like, it's not looking good for 45 minutes isn't that difficult.
It depends who you're interviewing. I've had some interesting interviews over the years.
If you're generally speaking. But for me, if you look good for a period of 6 to 12 months, because you're sharing content on, even if it's just sharing a post on LinkedIn, for example, every single day, if you look good for 6 to 12 months, for me, that's far more convincing than being able to look good for half an hour in an interview. And I would, any day of the week, pick the person that's built trust and authority over 12 months than 30 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. So this is all brilliant, Sam. There's some great advice in there. I always like to flip this on its head as well. So there's a bunch of things you can do there. We've talked about measuring success and building your brand, all those good pieces. Just flipping it around, what should you not do, or what should you watch out for? Because once you start creating a brand, whether it's for a company or a person, a misstep is a dangerous thing. It can cause problems with your brand and do some damage. So what do people who are thinking about really taking this seriously and creating their personal brand need to just be careful of and look out for?
Yeah. So buying followers, we mentioned, spreading yourself too thin, I think. When you start, you don't have to do absolutely everything. You don't have to be on every single social channel, do 6 podcasts a week, run your own newsletter and write a book. If you do that, you're probably going to do all of it not very well and none of it very well at all. If you're short on time or you're just getting started, you're much better off focusing on one specific channel. I think there's definitely merit in diversifying later on and building an audience that you own rather than borrowing from social. But if you're just getting started, focus on the lowest hanging fruit. Just do what's going to be easiest for you so you can start building momentum, and then it's going to be easier to diversify from there. So don't spread yourself too thin. Make sure you've got a clear destination or goal or strategy behind you. So kind of going out and going straight to, I'm going to do a podcast, or I'm going to start posting content, or I'm going to go and feature in this blog. There's got to be a stage before that where you work out, right, where do I actually need to be seen? What sort of things do I need to be saying? Why should people actually listen to me? That's a hugely important question. The messenger matters more than the message sometimes. People need to know that the messaging you're putting out is coming from a place of authority, and you need to ask that question, why should people listen to me? So having a really clear picture of that when you start it takes a little bit of time on the front end, but you're going to find the growth of your personal brand happens at a much faster rate once you do that initial kind of focus at the start on why you're different, why you're better, why you're worth listening to.
I think it's a good point. I mean, it's something we, in marketing, we've always called reasons to believe, right? I mean, companies will tell you things all the time, but what's the reason to believe what you're being told? And there's a lot. There's of course social proof and reviews and things like that. But bringing in other sources of authority, bringing in other experts that you work with, bringing in data and research pieces to back that up, and really, as I say, as you're mentioning there, sort of give reasons for people to trust you and see you as an authority. I think it's critical. Good. Okay. Look, Sam, that's been brilliant. I think there's it's such a huge area, but there's so much opportunity within personal branding right now, and I think whether you're looking for a job, whether you're looking to build a business, whether you're just trying to build a profile for future opportunities or speaking engagements or whatever it is, I think if you're willing to spend a little bit of time investing in that, and I think it's well worth doing for the majority of people, and I would encourage personally anyone within a senior role within an organization to spend time thinking about their personal brand, because the impact that can make of a human on social media promoting something is much bigger than the impact of brand itself, and just a corporate logo has promoting things on social media. So I think it's such a critical area. So brilliant tips there, Sam. Thanks very much. Anyone who needs help with personal branding, do reach out to Sam at Kurogo, fantastic personal branding agency. So go and look them up. And in the meantime, do like and subscribe, and we'll see you on another episode of For the Love of Marketing. Cheers, Sam.